Hi everyone, my name is Cheryl. Welcome to my Happy Handcraft Studio. It is springtime in the Rockies. Blue sky, green trees, and cool breezes coming off of the snow-capped mountains. That is what our spring is in this area of Alberta. And it's really enjoyable, really enjoying that we are having spring this year. So as always, I'm busy. I'm busy stitching, quilting, sewing, doing charity work, reading, and the days fly by. So in this YouTube video, I'm going to be talking about the stitching I've done in May and June so far, my plans for June stitching, what I'm going to take to stitch and stash in Edmonton in the next couple of weeks. I'm going to talk about quilting and going to Quilt Canada in Edmonton. I have a little bit of sewing and some book reviews. Now I'll try to do this quick because last uploading it was a bit long and I had to divide it between two videos so that my iMovie would complete it. So I'm going to try to make this 30 minutes, which is my preferred time for FlossTubes. All right, so what I was working on. I continued to work on Queen Elizabeth II in Her Coronation Dress. I've got over to this part, which is the edge. This is by Teresa Gil. It's on a 28 count Vintage Blue Cashel, and I'm using the called for DMC. And this one I'm just going to continue to work on. It is one of those long-term projects. So my next whip that I worked on is Merry Christmas by Durene Jones, and this I'm doing on a khaki even weave. I'm not sure what the fabric is, and this is a really enjoyable stitch. This is one of those ones where the pattern and the fabric just make stitching easy, so I'm looking forward to continuing with this one. So the project that I am in love with is 324. So 324 is Works by ABC, Arlene Cohen. I'm doing this on a 32 count white Jobelin. And what I've been doing is, I want to finish this in a year, so I broke it up into monthly sections. So April, May, I'm working on June right now, and then July kind of comes. I try to do as many days as there is in the month. This one is so addicting though. Once you get one block done, you want to go on to the next motif, and it just flows. It's lovely. You know, the blocks are just a simple 25 stitches, and then you go on to a motif that's more interesting, but it just all lines up. I'm really, really enjoying this one. Now, this floss tube should be called The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly. This one was bad. I've been working on it for quite a while, and that was Snow Globe, which was an Etsy pattern. And I talked before that this was not a good pattern, and part of it is the pattern's fault, part of it is my fault. the lights and darks were mixed up on the key. Now that's something I should have clued into quickly, but it was one of those 12 starts on New Year's Eve, and you know, you just kind of rush in, and I put a lot of stitches in, and this is what remains. There's no going back. You can't convince me that it will work. It's like continuing to do something that's not right. Yeah, but I've saved the linen, so there's a really good chunk of this nice permanent Copenhagen blue left that I'll be very happy to use in the future. Something else that I decided enough of, and I think I talked to you about this last time. I have this Dimensions kit, and the title is Joyful Floral. And it came with this Aida, which I hated. I just hated it. And as I was doing my prep for my video last time, I thought, I'm going to use different fabric. And so I did find different fabric. And this is a 28 count even weave. I'm not sure if it's 28 count. It could, let's see. Maybe a little bit less. I'm not sure. I'll check the tag for the next time. I'm much happier. I'm much happier doing this. It feels nice. It's great. And then I have my 52 book reading chart that I'm working on. And this is by Stitching Cabin from Etsy. I'm doing this on a 32 count pearl gray Lugana, and I'm doing some of the called for colors. And I think since last time I've started to put in this bouquet of flowers. There was supposed to be a candle burning, but I think I'm going to have more than 52 books, so I just deleting the candles and putting in a stack of books. So when I talked about this at the beginning of the year, one of my goals for reading this year is to read more of a variety. Now, I thought that I read mainly contemporary fiction. Well, this year I am not. Historical fiction, it seems like every book I'm reading is somehow historical fiction. To me, historical fiction is where the time period has a real impact on the story. Well, I'm glad I'm doing this, because if I was just continuing to read, I would just keep reading historical fiction. But what I found is if I did, this would just be great big chunks of blue. So I'm actually finding I'm choosing other books based on whether they are a mystery or contemporary or a memoir, just to have some variety and color. Not what I thought was going to happen, but it all works. And then a piece that I always love working on, and that is Hoity Toity. So Hoity Toity is from Long Dog Sampler. This is on a 32 count antique white Lugana, and I'm using the called for DMC. Except so far right here. The background of the M was actually more of a darker color. Excuse me. And I didn't care for it. So I ripped out what I had done and I used this more of a blue-gray instead. And I'm enjoying that. And then the final piece, actually that is what I've worked on May, June. Now what I'm going to work on in June with the idea of what am I going to take to stitch and stash. So I do have a magnifying light that I'll take, but I don't want anything that's too hard to count, because I'm squirrel, I'm very distractible. So I'll show you what I've decided to take. So I'm going to take with me Simplicity Vintage, because it is on an Aida, and what I'm doing is the back stitch. So I think a back stitch would be a good thing to take with me. That's one of my first choices. Next choice is going to be this 52 book trackster, because I can, well, like here, I can put in one leg of the cross and get the bookshelf ready to go. And I can put books in without too much problem. I'll have a list of book colors that I need. And then I think I'm going to take this just because I love it so much, and I have my June piece section still to work on. And then the last one, Merry Christmas. So again, I can put in one leg of these big blocks of color. I think on this one side there's also, I could get more of the red in, maybe the hat, so that would be easy just to complete the X. So I'm looking forward to that. I have two more pieces that I have finished, but not fully finished, that are mystery pieces. They are to go to stitch and stash. So Judy, City Stitcher, she requested this last time and I forgot. I couldn't find it. My sewing studio was a disaster after the fabric and yarn sale. So I'm going to show you my tracking board for stitching. So I have, the stitches that I started in this year, stitches from last year, and then these stitches here, which are all 12 starts on the New Year's Eve. So I still have, oh no, that's wrong. Only 3 of them are from that. So if we look at my oldest ones, Hoity, Toity, and Coronation Dress. So those are big ones. And then I have 3 Christmas-like starts, which are Baubles Galore, Merry Christmas, and Happy Mood Point. So those are the ones that I would really like to get finished. My 2023 starts were Simplicity Vintage and Kingdom of Books. And then my 2024 starts have been my 52 book reading tracker, 324, and Joyful Floral, as well as these 2, which are my mystery Christmas ornament and my mystery winter project for Stitch and Stash. So this is what needs now to be done first. I need to get these FFO'd and ready for the retreat. I will take pictures of them before I package them up, and I'll share them with you on my next video, which should be some footage from the Stitch and Stash and Quilt Canada. So exciting times ahead. So that's what I have to work with. Right now I have 10 whips, which if you've been following along, that is my perfect amount. So I really would like to keep it at 10. To keep it at 10, that means I have to finish something before I can start something. Now, the ones closest to being finished would be these three, the Christmas ones from the New Year's Eve start. So I guess Christmas in July. That sounds good to me. All right, so that's my board and plans are made. So quilting. It's been a busy season for quilting because in May and June, we have the Festival of Quilts at Heritage Park, which is our historical park in Calgary. And we have my Quilt Guild. We have our challenge show wrap up in the beginning of June. And so I have things for that. So first of all, we had Festival of Quilts. That was at Heritage Park. I only had one entry this year, and that was my hillside houses. And that was located in Burns Barn. Now, we had a very rainy weekend. I was lucky. My quilt was meant to be in there because that was where the year challenge quilts were held. There were some quilts out, but not as many as usual because the committee decided early on that it was going to be rainy and they would put a lot of the quilts under cover in this huge tent that they have. And so it appeared like there weren't as many quilts as usual, but there were actually over 600 quilts. So it was a good show. So then we had my Quilt Guild show, and we keep the same challenges there. So I had my hillside house there. And then I also had this quilt that I finished 2 days before the show. And this was in the category Get It Done. So Get It Done was, it needed to be an unfinished project that had been started prior to September 2023. So I had made the 100 modern blocks from Tula Pink, and I believe it was during COVID. I think it was an Instagram challenge where you posted a block every day, and there were prizes and things like that. But I got all 100 blocks completed, and it sat. And I love these blocks. You know, I love them, how they look. There's a real variety, but I didn't need a quilt that was 100 blocks. So I divided it into 2 sets of 50. And this is the first set that I have done. And I have a picture here showing what it looks like. So this is on a light background. It's a kind of a linen look. And if you'll notice the binding, I use the fabric, different fabrics from the blocks, and I have it going as a gradation of the color wheel around it. I'm really pleased, really happy with this. So the next goal is to do the same thing, but I'm going to use a dark background. I'm not sure if I'm going to use a black or a gray, something different, just to see how they compare with a light background and a dark background. So stay tuned for that. And then the final sewing project I have. So during our fabric and yarn sale, we get what we call orphans. We get orphan blocks. So people hand in or donate blocks that they finished but are not in a quilt. They're not in a project. Maybe it was a sample block. Maybe they decided they didn't like the color combination, whatever. Well, I found 4 blocks that were potted violets, and I'll show you that. So this was the block, the little violets, and they're nicely done, and there's little like yo-yos with beading. And so I turned these into pouches. I figure you can always use a pouch. A small hoof would fit into this. And then I have I think all of them have this same pink lining. So I made this one and this one. And then these two, I did a boxed bottom. Some people might prefer that. So these are ready to go. So happy with those. Hopefully those orphans will go to a good home. All right, so books. Interesting reading. So I'll lead up to what I think is the best. So the one that was kind of, like a filler in between my historical books was a book called, and I don't have the author here. I'll have all that linked in the description box below. It was called I Didn't Do It. And this is a murder mystery fun book. A little bit different because it takes place at a convention of mystery thriller authors. It's called Murder Palooza. And one of the nominees for the big award is Murdered at the Hotel. And everything gets posted onto Twitter. And all the Twitter followers jump on all these different bandwagons of who did it. You think you know who did it, but you're going to be wrong. I'm just going to say it right now. It's a cozy mystery. It was interesting. Having the Twitter aspect of it, the whole social media feed, I thought made it a little bit different and interesting. So the next one, these two are kind of tied. They're kind of equal in my books for very different reasons. The first one is Night Watch by Jane Ann Phillips, and that won the 2023 Pulitzer Prize. Interesting, to me it's a historical fiction because it centers on the lives of people who are dealing with the aftermath of the Civil War. So Civil War is really central to this book. The author was quite offended that it was considered a historical fiction. So, yeah, I don't know. When you read, I'll just read the description. In 1874, in the wake of the war, erasure, trauma, and namelessness haunt civilians and veterans, renegades and wanderers, freed men and runaways. 12-year-old Kona Lee, the adult in her family for as long as she can remember, finds herself on a buckboard journey with her mother Eliza, who hasn't spoken in more than a year. They arrive at the Trans-Allegheny Lunatic Asylum in West Virginia, delivered to the hospital's entrance by a war veteran who has forced himself into their world. There, far from family, a beloved neighbor, and the mountain home they knew, they try to reclaim their lives. Trigger warning, there is sexual assault in this book. What I found so interesting is when you hear about a book that takes place in a lunatic asylum, you are really expecting the worst. And that is not the case in this book. It's based on an actual asylum in West Virginia, and it was developed with the idea of moral treatment. So the doctor who developed this asylum based the treatment plan on humane, healthy choices. I mean, they're choices that we would make today. walking every day, being outside, balanced meals. Each patient had their own room with a window. It was really interesting. And for me, I had a real connection to the idea of, say, a mental hospital. My grandparents lived in a small town in Alberta where the main employer was the mental hospital. And in our family photo album, we have all these pictures of my grandparents and my mother and aunts and uncles picnicking in this beautiful park. The beautiful park is the mental hospital. It was where everyone went on Sunday afternoons to have picnics. So, I was really quite touched by that part of the book. The next book that I really enjoyed was called Restless Dolly Maunder. And this is by Kate Grenville. So this takes place in Australia. And it's based on one of Kate Grenville's ancestors. And I'm going to show you the other cover. This is actually the picture of her maternal grandmother, Dolly Maunder. I really love this book for that it took place in Australia, and you get very different parts of Australia in the book. Dolly is born in 1881 on a sheep farm in New South Wales. She loves school. If she would have had her way, she would have been a teacher. But that is not what her father had in mind. As far as he was concerned, his children were to work on the family farm. And if you were a girl on the farm, you spent your days cooking and cleaning and keeping everything going. The only way you got out of farm work was if you married and probably went to a different farm. Well, that is not what Dolly wants. And so she finds a way out. And what we find is a woman who broke convention. She made different choices so that she could live a life where she wasn't contained. It was a really good read. And then my top book is a book from my African book club, and it's called A History of Burning by Janika Oza. So in my book club, we really focus on what Africa is like for the people living there, born there. A lot of the books have a lot of colonialism effects in them. And this one wasn't something that we'd ever thought of, that I'd ever thought of. And that was how many people from India came over to Africa during the colonization process. So this book is about 4 generations. It's one of those great family sagas. I loved it. 3 sisters, one impossible choice. This is a debut novel, and it spans India, Uganda, England, and Canada. And it's about how one act of survival reverberates across generations of a family and their search for a place of their own. It starts with a young boy, 1898. His brothers and sisters are starving. His mother sends him out to find a job so that they can have food to support their family. He gets an offer of a job, and before he knows it, he's on a boat to Africa, and he works building the railway. it is a hard life. And he struggles through. And we know he survives. He has children and grandchildren. It is a great story about why people, the different reasons that we have immigration. It was really a wonderful, wonderful book. You know, it's a big read. I listen to it on audiobook. I always love audiobooks to get a sense of people's names and situations. It was really good. And right now I'm currently reading more great books, so stay tuned. There's more to come. So if you've lasted this long, thank you so much. Be sure to follow Judy at City Stitcher. She has information about our Stitching at the Library that's happening at the end of June. We'd love to see you there. We're always welcoming to new people. A new face is a great thing. We love it. All right. Thank you, everyone. And I hope to see you soon. Bye-bye.